If your cymbals are sounding like this, and you want them to sound like this, I'm going to show you how I got that exact cymbal sound, and I'm also going to show you how I EQ, compress, and set levels. So let's go. Now the big key on getting a great cymbal sound is your cymbals. If you're using Zildjian ZBT or Minos HSC or Sabian B8s, you're not going to get a good sound out of those cymbals no matter what. They're great and all to begin with, but you're going to want to look to upgrade. What I'm using is a 22-inch Crash Ride Dream Bliss cymbal, and for the hi-hats I'm using two 18-inch crashes. The top crash is an Istanbul Exist crash, and the bottom is an Istanbul Sultan dual crash. And for my main crash, I don't know what it is. I found it at a thrift store, but I guess it's a Kaza or Kasaza or whatever. I don't know. It's an amazing cymbal, and as you can tell, I've already broke it. Yeah, it works like a charm. Now let's look at the microphones. The microphones that I'm using for the overheads is the Cascade Fatheads. Very good, reasonable ribbon microphones. And for the hi-hats, I'm using the Shure SM7B. So let's look at the mic placements. Now for the longest time, I always did the basic overhead placement, where you had the microphones evenly spaced over the kit to get an overall good sound out of the drum kit. But after doing that, I always found myself rolling off a bunch of the lows and trying to boost the highs to make sure those cymbals cut through the mix. So I ended up scrapping that placement. Now I just move my overheads to where they're focused more on the cymbals than the whole kit. So what I'll end up doing with the placement is I'll have the microphone pointed at the edge of the cymbal to where it's opposite of where I'm striking it, and I'll usually do around 10 inches away from the cymbal. I usually use my fingers to get an even distance with both of them. Now for the hi-hat, what I always thought I had to do is I had to point my microphone to where I'm striking it on the hi-hats, and when I did that, I got a honky sound. So what I ended up doing is that I brought the microphone to the edge of the cymbal on the opposite side of where I'm striking. That way I get a nice, clean, crisp sound out of my hi-hats. And with the distance, I'll usually do like 2 fingers away from it. Now sometimes I fluctuate between distance. I usually do 2 to 3 fingers, normally 3, just because when I'm opening and closing the hi-hat, I don't want it to bump into the microphone. So now let's get to mixing. Let's start with the EQ first. The first place I like to boost is 15K. Right there, I'm getting some air out of my cymbals. Second place I like to boost is 4.5K. Again, just adding more brightness to it. Third place I like to boost is 2.5K. Right there, I'm just adding some body to the cymbals, if that makes sense. Now for the places I like to cut. And what I'll usually do for cutting, I'll usually just put a high pass filter and I'll just bring that out all the way to like 600 hertz. Now what I'll do with the overheads is that I'll take both channels and create them into a group, and then in that group I end up doing a parallel compression with it. The settings that I like to use on my compression is a medium fast attack, a fast release, and I like to smack it so I hit the all on the ratio. And then on the main channel, I'll end up using fresh air, just a little bit. Now let's look at the hi-hats. The first place I like to boost is 14K. Right there, I'm getting a little bit of air out of it. Second place is 4.4K. Right there, I'm just adding some more body. And remember, with all these EQs, you have to always think about the song instead of doing it in solo when you're mixing. Now for the place I like to cut is putting a high pass filter and then pushing that all the way to 300 hertz. For compression, I like to use a medium fast attack, a fast release, and I think I'll usually do a 4:1 ratio. And then on the main channel, I'll end up just adding a little bit of fresh air. Now another key thing that you want to do for mixing is mixing the rest of your drums. So check out this video.